Hi everyone, my name is Amany. I'm 26 years old. I grew up and live in Bethlehem, Palestine, and I work as a media and communications officer at the Wild University of Palestine. I'm going to be talking about my reality as a young woman who was born and lives under military occupation. And this is, of course, the reality of all young people living in Palestine and all Palestinians of all ages. The occupation has created a harsh reality for us, and even unbearable reality for us. We face challenges on a daily basis living in Palestine, and one of our biggest challenges are the restrictions on movement that we face on a daily basis. Israel has put so much effort into ensuring that we are restricted and our movement is restricted. They have built a huge wall that we call the separation wall, um, not only to restrict our movement, but also to appropriate as much Palestinian land in the West Bank as possible. And that's where I live, the West Bank. So the wall is built on Palestinian land, and it goes through, cuts through Palestinian lands. Um, and for that reason, because of that wall, Palestinian cities inside the West Bank have become literally open air prisons. Wherever I go in the West Bank, I see the wall, and I really feel that I'm living in a prison. Um, so mentioning that I live in the West Bank, um, and as a Palestinian living in the West Bank, I hold a Palestinian identity card. This one, whereas Palestinians living in Jerusalem, they hold the Israeli identity card. It's a blue card. Um, Now, this doesn't make them citizens. For the Israeli government, Palestinians living in Israel are considered residents, not citizens. That's why they're not treated equally as Israelis, and they're not giving equal rights, and actually they're treated as second class residents. And the only difference between me and them is that they can move freely between the West Bank and Israel, but I cannot. And in order for me to go to Jerusalem, um, I need to have this permit that's issued by the government of Israel. And this is only issued for specific purposes like religious holidays, for medical reasons, for work purposes. But it's not that every Palestinian gets a permit. Many Palestinians have never been given, have always been denied permits and have never been to Jerusalem. Um, and and of course, for me to have this permit, I need to have this thing. It's called the magnetic card, and this needs to be renewed every 4 years, and I pay a lot of money for it. Now, it's not enough to have a permit to go to Jerusalem. For me to get to Jerusalem, I cannot just get on the bus that goes from Bethlehem to Jerusalem and that's it. I have to go through a military checkpoint. And for you to imagine, to help you imagine what a military Israeli checkpoint is, think of it as a security check at the airport. But also think of it as a place where you're humiliated, you're dehumanized, you're treated basically like animals. Um, at a checkpoint, when we get to the checkpoint, we have to first go through what we call the rolling gates, and usually in most, and I think in most checkpoints there's a number of rolling gates. But of course, because soldiers love to make our life as harder always and enjoy seeing us suffer, they only open one or maximum two gates. So imagine a huge crowd of people lined up trying to cross this gate. Many of them have jobs to go to, many of them have doctor's appointment to go to, and they only line there to go through one or maximum two gates. And of course, usually the soldiers would only let 3 people pass through the gates at a time. And many times they would lock all the gates and keep us waiting for 10 minutes, half an hour, um, an hour, 3 hours, it doesn't matter. So imagine how much attention is created, the frustration people are feeling because they're late to work, they're late to their appointments. So they get angry at each other. And you imagine children in suffocating in the crowds and crying, and their parents cannot do anything about it. So then we cross the checkpoint, the gate, we get to the detecting machines. Now, a lot of times when I've been when I went to the checkpoint, the floor would be really dirty, and that's especially when in winter time. There will be mud on the floor and water on the floor. So if your shoes beep and they should go on the detecting machine, you don't have no choice. They don't care. The soldiers don't care if you have to walk on dirty floor. You must take them off. So this is only the beginning of a checkpoint. Then you get to the final uh, to the final, let's call it a phase, where you have to give your permit to the soldier in the booth. Now, in most cases, if you have a permit, you will pass. But sometimes, even if you have a permit, you won't be allowed in, because on that day it might be a Jewish holiday and only certain types of permits are allowed to enter. And I've seen this happen with many elderly people who have doctor's appointment and are going to the hospital, but they won't be allowed in, and they would be forced to go back home. And not only adults require permits, also children need to have permits to go to Jerusalem. I remember when I was little, I would be able to use my birth certificate, but after years, the system changed, so it became mandatory for children to have a permit. So I remember one day I was going to Jerusalem with my mom, and I tried to use my birth certificate, but it didn't work, and I was forced to go back home alone. And I've seen this happen with many kids, where they were separated from their parents, so they didn't have permits, and forced to go back home alone, and their parents would go on their own to Jerusalem. Now, it's not just hard to travel between the West Bank and Israel. It's also hard for us to travel outside Palestine. So because we don't have an airport in Palestine. We had one in Gaza and it was destroyed, and we cannot use the Israeli airport, so we have to fly through Jordan. So Jordan is literally 2 hours away from Palestine, but it can take us up to 10 hours or even more to get to Jordan. And that because I have to cross borders. I go from Palestinian side to the Israeli side to the Jordanian side. So depending on how many people are trying to pass that day, especially especially in summer and in the day, during the day, it would be huge crowds of people. It can take so much time, forever, to get to Jordan. And we have pay a lot of taxes, of course, to the Israelis and to the Jordanians, and then we get to Jordan and we need to take a taxi all the way to the airport. Or if our flight is next day, we have to book a hotel, which all costs a lot of money. So we always have to be prepared way ahead of time. So because our life is just characterized by uncertainty. If my flight tomorrow, I have to be in Jordan today because I cannot guarantee that I will get there on time and I won't miss my flight. And it's also what's also important to mention is that even moving from one city inside the West Bank to another has become harder than before. This is because Israel has established settlements which are established on Palestinian land in the West Bank, and they're illegal under international law. And they're actually expanding these settlements. And because there are settlements all over the West Bank, there are settlers only roads where Palestinians cannot drive. Therefore, we have to take long roads to get to the cities in the West Bank. So if it would take like an hour maximum to get to Ramallah before the occupation, now it takes us an hour and a half, or even 2 hours, 3 hours. It depends, 4 hours, depending on the traffic. So this is only one. The restrictions on movement are one of is one of our many challenges. We face other challenges, including having limited access to resources, like especially water and electricity. In fact, Israel controls water, and we have to buy it for them. So while the Israeli citizen enjoys water all year long, Palestinians suffer from water shortage, especially in the summer days. It can be for 1 week, 2 weeks, a month. So that's why we have to buy our tanked water, which costs a lot of money. So if you come to the West Bank and you look at a settler's house in the settlement, on the rooftop you won't see tanks, water tanks. But if you look at the Palestinian rooftop, you will see tanks, because they're used to preserve water. It's the same for electricity. We buy it from Israel, and a while ago, for like a month or even more, the electricity would be cut by Israel every day. So some days we had no electricity for like 6 hours, less or more. And let's also not forget about the home demolitions that we hear of almost every single day, where entire families lose their homes and lands, and also Palestinians getting killed, which we also hear of almost every single day. In fact, last month, a young man with disabilities was going on his way to school, and he was shot by soldiers. And of course and he died, of course, and the soldier who killed him was released from prison some days later, which is a typical scenario in Palestine. And this is only one story out of many. In fact, about 2 weeks ago, another young man was shot. It was actually his sister's wedding day, and he was on his way to Bethlehem to pick up his sister from the salon with her mother. And on the way to Bethlehem, there is a checkpoint, which is, there's no reason for it to be there. It's illegal because it's in this West Bank on Palestinian land. But still it's there. So as he reached the checkpoint, he lost control of his car, and he drove into the soldiers. So he was shot, of course, but he didn't die immediately. But what happened is the soldiers made sure he died. So they watched him bleed, and they didn't allow anyone to come near him. No people, not paramedics. And they made sure he died, and then they took his body, and they refused to give it to the family to bury him, which is also a typical scenario in Palestine. But also, let's not forget about the many Palestinians in Israeli prisons for no reason. And a lot of them are actually children and minors. Let's not forget about the refugee issue. Refugees make up 70% of all Palestinians around the world, and under international law, they have the right to come back to their homeland. But Israel keeps preventing them from that, depriving them of that right. But currently, we're actually living an even harder, we're faced with an even bigger issue. So it's true that this year has been hard for the entire world, but because of the coronavirus, but it's even harder for us in Palestine. Um, Currently, we're facing the second wave of infections, which is more ferocious than the first one, and there are many cases every single day. But also, and of course, this pandemic has left Palestinians even more fragile. Many people lost their jobs, and and um, in addition to that, though, we are faced with a new reality. We are currently in so much worry and uncertainty because um, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is planning to annex 30% of the West Bank, including the over 250 illegal Israeli settlements and the Jordan Valley. And the Jordan Valley is very important for Palestinians in the West Bank. It's actually because it has so much future opportunities for development. But of course, over the years, Israel has exploited this area and has banned Palestinians from using and accessing 85% of the area. But with the annexation, it means the whole area will be under the sovereignty of Israel, so Palestinians won't have access to it. We are not sure how the annexation will look on the ground, but if it actually happens, one thing we're sure about is that it will create an even harsher reality for us. It will actually make life really unbearable for us. We are sure that many families will lose their homes and lands. We are sure that many Palestinians won't have access to basic services, or will have limited access to basic services. We are sure that that restrictions on movement will increase immensely. That many farmers will lose. They will no longer be able to reach and cultivate their lands, and thus lose their only source of income. Um, but of course, in addition to the occupation, as a young woman living in Palestine, in a still conservative and patriarchal society, I also face other social barriers. Because in Palestine there is this mentality still that women can do this, they cannot do that, or this or that. Um, so um, so so women have it even harder here in Palestine, and but of course we are keeping hope alive. We're keeping this fight, and personally I've been able to keep hope alive through the YWCA, because the YWCA has empowered me, has given me the opportunities, and empowered me to realize my own potential as an agent of change. And actually we work with youth to empower them, to educate them about their rights, social, economic, and political rights. So because we believe they are the agents of change in the society. But in addition to the YWCA, I've been able to overcome the barriers, and to fight the oppression and defeat and injustice through running. I'm actually part of a running community called Right to Movement, and we run to tell. We're a community of young women and men running to tell a different story about Palestine, and to show the world that it is our right to to move freely inside our own country. And we are human beings with basic human rights. Um, but also the community aims to empower women and young women to and encourage them to take part in sports, because sports is one area where there is a lot of do's and don'ts for girls. There's still many people still believe there are some types of sports are not meant for girls, like running, like riding a bike. But we have been able to change this mentality, and gradually we are changing that mentality. I actually loved running my whole life, but I never had the courage to actually run in the streets before I joined Right to Movement. So we started small, but we started small in Bethlehem and grew into huge communities across the West Bank. And every day there's more women and young women joining our communities. So we are keeping hope alive, and it's actually our motto at the YWC. Our motto is keep hope alive. Um, but we cannot keep hope alive, and we cannot continue with our fight without your support and the support of the international community. We believe that only together we can defeat injustice. Only together we can create and achieve just peace, and only together we can make this world a better place for all. Thank you.